Welcome to the GreenPilled Network podcast. If you're just joining us, we are building a coordination, a network society of thousands of hackers, dreamers, and doers focused on using crypto to bring positive sum digital systems to the world. This podcast features the people who are doing it, and we publish them a season at a time, 5 to 10 episodes at a time every couple months. This season is Impact season. We are in GreenPill season 3, and it's all about how can we measure the meme of impact equals profit. What are the most interesting experiments and ideas in impact tracking? How can we build crypto economic systems that elevate impactful builders? And how do we move from virtue signaling about impact to crypto economic proof of virtue? These are the themes in Impact season 2024. One special thing that we're doing this season is we're allowing you to collect this episode. All episodes during this season are available on chain, allowing the Greenpill community to collect them. And the proceeds for the collection of the NFTs go directly to support public goods, and collectors may be able to vote on future episodes and other fun perks supporting Greenpill. Go to pods.media/Greenpill to find all the episodes and start collecting. If you want to learn more, visit our website at greenpill.network, where you can download the GreenPill book for free, join the Discord, and become a member of your local GreenPill.network chapter. Our episode today is with Steve Dakh, who is a founder of the Ethereum Attestation service. I am excited about Steve because I think that Ethereum Attestation service could be a data layer in which impact attestations accrue, reference each other, reference impactful projects and the impact that they created. And together we can build a web of trust of different projects and see how impactful they actually are. So I think that EAS is going to be one of the primitives that we are building impact on in 2024, as we've got all of these different primitives coming online and projects coming online that all need to track impact. The EAS is a common standard that projects like Gitcoin, Giveth, Optimism, ClearFund can all use in order to consume information about which projects have impact and which ones don't. So this episode with Steve and Carl was really quite amazing because we got to talk about the different ways that EAS could be used in order to track impact and create the meme of impact equals profit more in the real world. So 2024 is impact season, and I'm really enjoying this episode with Steve. I think you're going to as well. Hey, Steve. Hey, Carl.
Hey, Kevin.
Steve, can you tell us about Ethereum Attestation service?
Yeah, sure. So Ethereum Attestation service is a base layer open source public good for allowing any entity to attest about anything on or off chain. It's open source and has no token, and it's simply a new primitive for EVM blockchains that allows any entity to attest or essentially say anything about anything.
I'm kind of curious to hear a bit more about how EAS got its start. I feel there's a version that I heard about where it's been around for quite some time, but now it's gotten some renewed life.
Yeah, it's a good story. So, I mean, just like to go like a little bit further back. I've been like in the blockchain space since 2011. I built some of the first Bitcoin wallets in 2013. I built like the first ever Chrome extension wallet called CryptoKit in 2013, and Rush Wallet, which was an easy to use Bitcoin wallet. And then in December 2013, I met Vitalik actually before that, but Vitalik had told me about Ethereum for the first time in Vegas, December 2013, and then in January I was in the Ethereum house with everybody. So like back then, even then we were thinking about, how could you solve like, decentralized identity and reputation, decentralized like real estate and voting and everything, and we were super excited about it. Like 9 years later, we're not really, using it to the extent that we probably hoped that we would. And so, EAS was like something that, it originally, I started working on it in 2017. There was a hackathon in Toronto, and I decided I was going to build an attestation kind of platform. Just all came to me while I was there. And the issue though was two of the judges were Uport employees, and so this attestation platform was kind of like competitive to theirs, and they didn't rate me, so they didn't rate me well, so I didn't win. And so I thought it was a super important project, and then didn't kind of didn't touch it for 3 years. And then in December 2020, kind of got hit up my partner, and I said like, hey, like, it'd be awesome to actually build this out, like, because we were working on building wallets, and I was saying like, wallets are cool and all, but there's so many of them, and like, what else is in your wallet? Your identity and your reputation. That would be cool. Let's solve like a real hard problem. And at the time, like, there was just like any identity platform that existed in the blockchain space is just mostly like a kind of like a glorified KYC company with its own like kind of proprietary mechanism for verifying users and then passing that data to some like exchange or entity that's verifying the user. But that's not real identity, right? That's not real identity and reputation. And I was really interested in like, how do we really solve, philosophically, decentralized identity and reputation? How do we solve it? Because it's super complex. Like, my identity is both, it's relative in the sense that like, Carl might think I'm a good programmer, but maybe someone else doesn't. And it's contextual. Like, Carl might think I'm a good programmer, but not a good dancer, right? And so like, how do you like, combine these pieces into something that, because these pieces are like parts of your identity. Your identity isn't like some identity card. Your identity is like all of these things that have happened, throughout your life. And so I started to think like, what actually is identity? And then started to think like, well, at some point I had no identity, and then I did. So that, started to think about what was that point when I, first did. And then I realized like, well, when I was born, my mom named me Steve. You could say that she attested to my name. And then I went to school, and the teachers, they attested to my grades. And the kids in the class, they could have attested to whether they liked me or not. The government attested to my passport and my driver's license. The university attests to your diploma, and like your employer could attest to your employment or whether you're a good employer or not. And so actually, like, we realized you can actually represent something as complex as identity and reputation as an aggregate of these attestations. And so if you really want to solve this problem on like a real scale, you need to start with a base layer where anybody can attest about anything. And so like, EAS itself isn't an identity protocol or layer. It's just a base layer for entities to attest. And from those attestations, one could aggregate an identity. But we're not trying to solve the identity problem directly. We're just providing the tools that make it possible to, because your identity is made up of all these little Lego blocks, right? These simple Lego blocks that we believe are attestations. And if I show you a bunch of attestations that might be relevant to you, if say maybe I want to go into business with you, and I show you a bunch of attestations from entities that you care about saying good things about me in all these different categories, you may decide to work with me. So back to the story. In 2020, we kind of like redid it with a schema structure and the attestations. Basically, in 2020, we built what we have today, and we first like announced it at ETC in around the same time in 2020, and it was at the same time that Vitalik came out and started talking about SBTs. And so it caught everybody's attention. And so EAS kind of went off to the side. And I feel like maybe it was a little bit too early. And then also, our team, right now it's only 4 of us. It was only 3 at the time. And it was just all tech dudes with we didn't have anyone that was good at design or marketing or, stuff like that. And so now we have Bryce on our team that I met about like a year and a half ago or so, and he joined EAS and like kind of restarted EAS. I restarted EAS back in like November last year, and then we launched it in March. And so this time it's really picked up. So this is the third time's a charm. I think we built something really cool this time, and we built like a really good UX for developers, and the tooling is really good, and the documentation is really good. So I think this one's the charm for sure.
Yeah, it feels like it's a very generalizable primitive, but also potentially very deep as well as being very generalizable. I'm looking at this graphic on your website where you have the settlement layer, like Ethereum, and then on top of that, the attestation layer, and then above that is the application layer. So we're kind of looking at a protocol for attestations about anything that can serve as a data store. And I think that one of the things that's really powerful about having the attestations in their own protocol, in their own layers, the interoperability that creates between different applications. Gitcoin and Optimism could both send attestations on the same protocol, but also consume attestations from each other, which is just going to be really key if we're going to build this network effect of attestations about impact together. I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about the technical design of EAS and how you designed it to be both generalizable but also deeply impactful.
Yeah, so one of the key things when we were designing is we wanted to presuppose as little as possible. We wanted to build the system to be like as simple as possible and presuppose as little as possible, because the more you presuppose, the more you limit possible applications. And so EAS is actually really simple. There's two base smart contracts for EAS. There's a schema registry, and then the attestation ledger. And so the schema registry allows any entity to register any schema, or you can say a type of attestation. So, attesting to a vote would be using one schema. Attesting to someone being an RPGF badge holder is another schema. Anyone can create a schema. It's completely permissionless. Every schema gets its own unique identifier. And anytime someone makes an attestation, they have to select the schema. They're attesting to a particular schema, and that schema also describes the data structure of what is in that attestation. So maybe something simple like a retro public goods funding, it just says, it's like a Boolean, true or false, that you're a retroactive public goods holder. But maybe if it's like, something detailing, maybe some contribution that you made, maybe there's like a few rows, like maybe one of the columns is, one of the fields is, type of project and, like how much hours have been put into it. And you can have as many fields as you want and design, to whatever level. And then additionally, schemas can also have optionally a resolver smart contract attached to it. And what this does is anytime an attestation is made of that schema, it will run through that smart contract. So you can do interesting things. Like, for example, you can make it so that only certain users can attest. Maybe only users that have specific attestations can attest. You can say, if an attestation happens and these rules pass, an NFT is generated or a token is sent. You can write whatever logic you want. And so this is what allows EAS to, be kind of extendable to whatever level that you want. Users can attest. All they're doing is attesting, but you can have like smart contract logic that maybe that attestation is an oracle attesting to a particular fact that happened, and that attestation now is being like automatically pays out the oracle for a reward for telling the truth or for submitting a response. And so that's the basic layout. There's a schema registry and then the attestation ledger, and every attestation just references a schema. Additionally, any attestation itself, attestations can reference other attestations, and this is huge. Like, so say I attest that I met Kevin, rather than Kevin also attesting that he met me, that would create two different timestamps, and like maybe we're not talking about the same meet. Maybe we met at two separate times. What if I attest that I met Kevin, and then Kevin attests using a schema that just says is true, and then references my attestation? So now what happened is I attested that I met Kevin, and Kevin attested that attestation is true. And so this kind of composability is super powerful. Attestations also can be revocable, which is super huge. Like if I attest to something, and I want to revoke it, I'm not necessarily making it go away. Like an NFT might just disappear, but I want it to still exist, but it should just appear as revoked. Maybe I had some sort of like position at a company and my position was revoked, but it was there at some point, and I want to have this record. Attestations also can expire. And so that's also powerful. And one of the coolest things is attestations can also be made off-chain gaslessly, and can also be timestamped and revoked off-chain. And that's super powerful because, and we think like that this kind of ability is what's going to help, onboard, the rest of the world that might not want to hold ETH, but still want to participate and use blockchain technology, being able to sign using their like Ethereum key, for example. So we're super excited about off-chain attestations that are completely portable and verifiable by anyone. And so we have that, and then we have the EAS Explorer, which is like a front end website which allows you. It's like the Etherscan of attestations, allows you to like easily review and see all attestations that are happening, easily create schemas, and verify on and off-chain attestations super easily.
One of the things I think is elegant here is the trade-off between generalizability and really constraining things further up the stack. So by using Ethereum Attestation service, I basically have a protocol that I can use for attestations, but there's so many different types of things that you can attest to in the world that by adding in schemas above that, then I'm basically able to constrain the variables and the types of variables that will be in each type of a attestation schema. So as I go to the EAS website, I can and I create an attestation. It's asking me which schema I want to use, and so I can use a signed document schema, a username schema, is an accredited investor schema. And what I like about this is that if I'm a developer that's integrating with EAS, these constraints help me know something useful about the attestation that's being made while still getting the benefit of the generalizability of the Ethereum attestation service. So just that trade-off between those constraints and the generalizability feels like a really elegant thing to me.
Yeah, I think so too. It's EAS, like I said, is not an identity platform. You can use attestations, for supply chain, verification. Maybe, when you buy something in the future, you get your, new phone. There's like an attestation of that phone like being initiated, and then all these referenced attestations of it moving throughout, different processes and different entities kind of coming into contact with it and attesting to something about it.
One of the things that I observed most recently with RetroPGF, which used attestations quite heavily in the round design, and the experience from applying to participate in RetroPGF to becoming a badge holder to actually signaling which projects you wanted to vote for, was that once you start making one attestation, you immediately think about how you can connect other attestations to that one. And so it really had the power of composability across multiple attestations. And so I'm kind of curious if there are other examples like RetroPGF of taking one attestation and then layering on more and more attestations on top of that.
Yeah. So I mean, so one kind of example that we like to talk about, we built this example application, and it's not meant to be serious, but speaketh.org, like speak and then eth.org. It's like a social network kind of app. It's kind of like a Twitter, where every post is an attestation, every like is an attestation referencing a post, and every comment is an attestation referencing the post also. And so you can have like, a comment is just a post referencing another post. And so you can have posts continuously referencing each other for infinity. And you can just build a UI where you have the whole thread, and you can build all sorts of interesting kind of things. Like for impact, I think it's like a huge one, right? Because you don't want to ever have just like one trusted party. So like you have one entity maybe attest that they've created some sort of impact, and then perhaps you have other entities who have been witness to that, and they also attest. And then like overall, when someone looks at this impact attestation, they can decide for themselves based on who attested, like, and whether or not they're valuable. And like that's actually like brings me to like an important point. Like if we really want to have like true decentralized like relative reputation and trust, we need to start we need to be able to attest to each other and then aggregate all of this in some sort of way to be able to kind of make these decisions. But it's actually very natural and much more natural than it's, instead of like a government score saying this person is a 500, you would say, well, like who is this person to me, right? Like this person is attached to me through this entity and this entity, three hops away, and so therefore there's some sort of weight, positive or negative, depending on what were the attestations that I can kind of derive from that. And that'll be like super interesting when in the future, when you want to find like a plumber or just you meet someone, you can say like, who is this person related to me? Are they connected to my network in some way? And then like really be able to kind of see and understand the connection in a way that you couldn't really do before.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. Another thing that I observed during the RetroPGF round was that people who wanted something that the current front end didn't offer, they would just go in, look directly at the attestation data, and either do their own analysis or build their own front end on top of that. And so, in addition to making it so that you could stack different attestations on top of each other, if you wanted to curate the data or if you wanted to visualize it in different ways, all you have to do is just go directly to the source, and then you're liberated from the front end.
Yeah, and yeah, like we never wanted like our provider to be like the main one. We want it to be as open as possible. That's why we open source our indexer. We open source like all of the code so that anybody can easily like aggregate all this data for themselves and build their own UIs. And in the same way, like you can technically use Uniswap through the Etherscan interface, but you probably wouldn't. It's probably not recommended. It's better to build like a custom UI, basically for that for a use case rather than having to rely on this kind of developer tool.
Carla, I wonder if you have any more questions on this line of questioning. If not, I have a new direction I want to take us in. So Greenpill Season 3 is all about impact tracking and impact attestations. Basically, how can we move from people funding public goods that they know about to having data about which public goods are actually having impact? And so I see Ethereum Attestation Service as potentially a very important primitive in tracking impact, because you can create a decentralized set of impact attestations about which public goods are good and which ones are having impact. One powerful data structure that I've used in the past is called a web of trust. So basically you have an attestation hooked up to an attestation, hooked up to an attestation. And through looking at who the actors are and the context in which they've given the attestation, you can basically flow trust through the network. This is how Google does its search results. PageRank is a form of web of trust where if Vitalik.ca links to my post, then that gives me a certain amount of PageRank. And if I link out to Carl's post, then I can then pay that forward to him, and so on. So web of trust is an important, I think, primitive for how we're going to separate shitty attestations or fake attestations from the ones that are actually plausible. So I just want to put that vision on the table. Web of trust impact attestations on EAS, I think, is going to be a really important primitive as we start attesting to which grants have had impact, hypercerts have had impact. And I'm wondering if you have any reactions to that, just a general question to start, Steve, and then maybe I have a couple more specific questions to ask from there. So what's your reaction to web of trust on EAS is the reductionist question there?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to go even further back, like the original web of trust was kind of PGP based. And it was back in the day, you had this protocol called PGP, which still exists, and allows you to send private messages, and users also had their own, public private key pairs. But that web of trust is kind of very limited. Like, at what context, like if someone trusts someone, does that mean that they trust them with money? Does it mean that they trust them to as a friend? Like, what does that actually mean, right? And with EAS attestations, you can have real context, right? Like maybe someone shows up on this web of trust of attestations as like reputable, but maybe they're only reputable for one specific use case, and that's something that you'd be able to understand looking at attestations. That could be about anything, right? You might look at an attestation from someone and it's like their, Mickey Mouse Club membership or something, and that's not, really valuable to someone, but to someone else it might be. And I think the aggregation, and also the important part of this web of trust is being able to kind of derive a relative score rather than kind of like a global score. And so I'm 100% on this vision. I agree. I think that and I'm excited for applications and platforms to be kind of aggregating all these interesting attestations that come out and derive really interesting kind of relative scores and metrics. Like, for example, not only how much should I trust this entity, but how far away is this person from me, attestationally, or like from attestation hops. And also, like, maybe the same person is connected to me through 5 different individuals for many hops, but because in general all those individuals have passed like a positive kind of score downward to this entity, I should see him as somewhat positive, right? With obvious like diminishing returns as you go further out, but those diminishing returns can be almost like reversed when you have more connected entities that are also far away from that user. And then also, if maybe you assign negative trust to somebody and they attest to someone positively, my enemy, the friend of my enemy is my enemy, right? So it should also show up a little bit negative.
A funny emergent prediction about the web of trust.
Yeah.
The web of distrust is
Yes.
the web of trust. There's something profound that you said in there that I just want to pull out. With Google, there's only one page rank because centralization, monolith. But with Ethereum Attestation service, we could have, instead of page rank, let's call it impact rank. We could have Owocki impact rank. We could have Gitcoin impact rank. We could have Carl impact rank. And because the data structure is open source, then you can have many different impact ranks that are on top of there. And I feel that there's this ebb and flow between a very reductionist, Kevin's impact rank is 99, which is, I'm collapsing all the things I've done in the world into one dimension of impact. But for that, simplicity is a feature, because you can say, oh, I'm doing a Gitcoin grants round on Kevin impact rank, and therefore I can just rank everyone on this one dimensional number. But that doesn't reduce everyone's whole identity down to one number, because we're going to have the data is still available, and we can have many different types of impact that can be calculated on it. So there's this ebb and flow between reductionist simplistic scoring, which can bootstrap the network effect and usefulness of the network, and then looking at people in high dimensionality when we've got the time and wherewithal to do so, that I think is derived from the plurality of scores that can be created by an EIS style web of trust. And that feels like a profound step forward in web of trust to me, assuming that this vision comes to fruition.
Imagine in the future, right? You just, you have your identity or your private key pair, and then you attest, maybe even privately, right? You can attest off chain just to the people that you trust. Like, I trust my mom this much. I trust my brother this much. I trust my friends this much. If everybody does this, if everybody does this, or enough people do that, anytime you look at someone that's in the network, even if you don't know who they are, even if they're far away, you should be able to derive some sort of relative score, right? And then be able to make decisions based on that score. And then, like, imagine you make a decision based on that relative score, but then you get screwed over. You can then look back and say, like, well, why did that person have such a high score? And then you can see all the connections, and you can be like, oh, well, actually, I shouldn't really trust that guy. Tune him down, tune this guy up, tune him a little bit this to get better kind of information. And so I think that's going to be like the biggest. If you really want a real web of trust, it has to be a decentralized web of trust that calculates scores that are relative, right? We're going to also have, you'll also have like the Equifaxes and of the world that'll, they'll aggregate their own global scores, and you'll just kind of trust them, and businesses will trust them. But if you have so many entities that all derive their own scores, you have a choice, and it's not even that. I think in the future, everyone's not going to be always attesting. Someone might say, you know what, I trust Kevin Owocki. I trust the people that he attests to. I don't really know who to trust. I just trust the people that I like. And then if for some reason someone ends up doing a business deal with somebody and they get screwed, they'd be like, well, why did I trust them? Oh, well, like, this guy actually wasn't trusted by Kevin. He was trusted by someone else. And, you can really, like, clearly see what's going on. And another thing to notice is, like, we attest all the time. Like, it sounds crazy. Like, an attestation sounds like a really weird kind of abstract concept, but we're attesting all the time. When I'm attesting right now by speaking. When I make a post, I attest. When I sign a document, I attest. There's just never been like kind of a generalized way to do that digitally in like a signed way that anybody can easily verify and attest with. So
yeah, I mean, one of the things which is important here when it comes to who you trust is the question of who's going to watch these watchmen. And so if in a traditional system like an Equifax, it's very difficult for me to actually understand what formula they're using to come up with my credit rating. It's very difficult to understand if they're using it fairly, if they're being a good steward of the data. In a decentralized system, it's actually the opposite, which is that anybody has the ability to be a watchman and to watch this actor and see if they're actually doing their job. They have the ability to audit the formula, to propose a new one. And so I think in order to become an Equifax or someone who's going to have that kind of clout, you have to operate with a very, very different mindset, which is you need to, your whole intent should be to maximize the credibility and the neutrality of what you bring to this, as opposed to coming up with a proprietary algorithm that only you know, and your whole business depends on keeping that secret.
Another thing, it'll be in different categories, right? Like, so like, you might have a low score in like, engineering, but maybe a high score as an RPGF, impactor, like, and that's also another thing that's interesting. Like, it's not just one credit score. It's like you have a score in so many different things. And also this also allows for stuff like, being able to have like under collateralized loans as well, right? It's something that, we don't have in DeFi. And in the real world, you can trust the loaners will trust you because they know they can wreck your reputation if you have one. Whereas like this is something that you can't have. But imagine if I basically can risk all my attestations, right? Imagine I have all these attestations that I got from all these trusted people in the space, and then now I attest, Carl, I want to take a loan from you, and then you attest referencing that attestation. Sure, I'll service that loan, and we come into an agreement, and then I don't pay it back. You can then attest referencing those attestations saying I didn't pay back the loan. Anyone looking at that chain will see that I agreed to go in agreement with you. You attested that you agreed. We went into agreement, and then now something bad happened, and you can follow this kind of trail.
Yeah, it's interesting. Once I started to see the world as being a series of attestations, and I'm sure you do too. And when you look at existing like legacy processes, I don't know if you or anyone who's close to you has applied for a green card or for citizenship for the first time. And effectively what the process entails is just getting all of these attestations about you from different parts of the government. So your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, your identity stamps, where you've traveled, etc. And when I look at these things, again, it's hard to imagine a world where those are actually replaced with attestations. But at the same time, what you're looking at is just a series of attestations that have been made arbitrarily by these entities. So I'm curious how you kind of reconcile the kind of the state of where things are right now and this new world where everything is just an attestation.
I mean, like you said, like we already, these are all already like attestations. They just use like, specific like proprietary formats that like, not everybody can verify, not everybody can make. And so it creates inefficiencies. And also like, these documents, they're not super like, they can be counterfeited, you can't break a digital signature. I'm surprised that actually, we're in 2023 and we're not signing everything, with digital signatures. But you can say that, in just the last few years, because of, all the entrants into the crypto market that all have wallets now, so many people now have a private key pair and can now start attesting. And I think this is actually the big boost that helps get everyone to start attesting. Because like now, if the same guy who just, he has his NFT or his Coinbase account can now attest using a private key that only he owns. And this was not possible before that. There's never been like a mass, key generation event. And I would say that, 2017 was, and also 2020, I guess.
On the subject of starting to see everything like attestations, This is something that's happened to me since actually I listened to your Bankless episode, Steve, in which you were talking about all reputation being attestations. And Carl and I were on a Twitter thread in which I was talking about how I was talking about this season of Greenpill, the one that we're recording right now. And I said, Carl's going to co-host with me. And Carl responded, I'm looking forward to it. And I was just shit posting back to him. I said, attest that you're looking forward to it on chain or GTFO. And then he did. He made a like schema and then he attested to it and responded. And then there was a whole chain of people doing EAS attestations about their attestations. And when I mean, I don't know, this is kind of a shit post question / comment, but the thing that I thought that was really profound was that it was so easy for him to create a new schema and to create the attestation. And the final comment on the thread is, thus a new social media giant was born, a Web3 social media. So it's just really easy to, once you see the whole world as attestations, to actually use EAS to do that. And I think that that's cool.
That, it's actually a good point. One of the things, right, is like Ethereum promises all these amazing things to decentralize everything. But the average company or average person who wants to actually utilize Ethereum, they're not smart contract developers. And also, they don't want to hire developers to kind of come up with their concept. They essentially want to attest. All these companies want to attest, and there's no simple way to do it, and and everybody's kind of building their own proprietary mechanisms for doing so, and that just kind of makes more silos and reduces the interoperability. And so, like, we all just need to be, attesting with kind of like one, language, essentially.
Have you thought at all about private attestation? Say I want to attest to something about Carl, but I want to ZK it, or I don't want to reveal everything about it on chain. What does that design space look like?
So EAS doesn't presuppose what kind of data you'll attest with, right? And so you can attest, with zero knowledge proof data, for example. What we do have, right, so we have a few different tools. So off-chain attestations by default are completely private, right? So say like Kevin attests to that he trusts me, and I have this off-chain attestation that I can just show Carl or I can show someone else, right? It's not a zero knowledge proof, but it's akin to like like a signed document that you have from someone that's provable, and being able to kind of pass it around. Another thing that we have is the ability to do like selective revealing of data. So we have a tool built into the EAS scan indexer and our SDK where you can attest to a bunch of data, and then we Merkleize it in a way that's like very secure. And you only attest to just the Merkle root hash of the data. And then you can later prove to any entity pieces of that data. But it's not a zero knowledge proof. So in the sense that like when you share the data, you're sharing the actual data. You're not sharing like a signal about it. With EAS off-chain attestations right now, they're ECDSA signed. They're signed with EIP 712 with your wallet. Because of this, creating zero knowledge proofs off of the data is a little bit computationally expensive at the moment. And if you notice, all the firms right now, like Polygon ID and others, that generate zero knowledge proofs from like usually verifiable credentials, all those verifiable credentials are signed using a mechanism that is not EVM signing mechanism. So I'm like super bullish that, and this has been kind of confirmed to me by multiple people working on ZK, that the possibility to make zero knowledge proofs off of ECDSA signed data will be much more efficient soon. And then that would be really cool, because then you can have all these off-chain attestations from all these different entities, and then I can prove to you, Kevin attested to me that he met me, but I'm not going to tell you which address it happened to, and you can do things like that. And I'm super excited about that. And we have like multiple projects that are playing around with stuff like that on top of EAS.
Amazing. Hey Carl, we probably got to land the plane in the next 7 minutes or so. So next question's for you if you want it.
One question that I wanted to think about is if you look at EAS as a primitive, and if we wanted to measure the impact of EAS itself in adoption or becoming something which is widely adopted. I'm kind of curious how you would think about that task of like what would be the tool set to actually measure the impact of EAS on the broader Ethereum ecosystem or even the broader digital public goods design space.
I mean, generally just watching the adoption, who adopts it, right? And it's not just the attestation count, but who's attesting. Or is it just one entity that's attesting to a bunch of people, or is it a bunch of entities attesting, to each other? Like with retroactive public goods funding, every applicant had to make an attestation. They also received every RPGF badge holder received a badge holding attestation. Ultimately just watching the adoption, which I'm seeing happen like really organically. No one's really like attesting to useless data, which is really cool to see. Coinbase adopting EAS was probably like the biggest thing that's happened recently, and they have lots of plans for using attestations within the Base and Coinbase ecosystem, and so that's super exciting. I really believe 2024 will see like a ton of attestation use cases on top of EAS, and you can only measure impact relatively, right? And so like relative to you, if the companies that you think are valuable are attesting using EAS, and like those attestations have real value in the ecosystem, I think that's EAS is having impact then.
Is there anything we didn't ask that you want to say, Steve?
Just that we built EAS as a public good, because we really cared to solve this problem, and it's tokenless, it's permissionless, it's completely open source, in the same way that because if we didn't do that, someone else is just going to make another version and then make tie a token, make it a little bit cheaper, a little bit different. And we don't want more fragmentation. We want to get rid of the fragmentation. And we're not trying to replace the identity companies. In fact, a lot of these platforms are actually implementing EAS rather than, continuing to build on their, kind of siloed infrastructure. We want to bring everybody together. And actually what it does, it helps these companies because it improves the value of their attestations. Because, if their attestation is only useful within their silo, what's the value of that versus like being able to use that attestation outside of it? If TCP/IP or email, had a token or, had a profit motive, I don't think we'd be using it, in that same form. So that's another important thing.
One of the cool flywheels that we were talking about in our pre-episode was this idea that EAS, if it's a public good and it enables more impact of public goods and it gets funded by retroactive public goods funding, we've kind of taken out the leg of the stool that needs a token in order to be monetized. Not everything that has a token is for monetization reasons, but this flywheel of better impact tracking, meaning more public goods funding, and then EAS itself gets funding would be really cool. And I know you all were in RPGF3, and I think maybe have been in a Gitcoin round. So it'll be cool to see that flywheel spinning.
Yeah, we're really excited about that for sure. It definitely, it's definitely useful to us because, we have been, we're self-funded. We self-funded this whole project because we really, care about it. And, it's amazing that, things like RPGF and Gitcoin grants exist. It definitely helps keep us going for sure.
So I just want to place, before we wrap up, in the listener's mind, this vision of a web of trust in which we're all attesting to each other, and then we can create scores denoting how Sybil resistant different wallets are and how much impact they've had on all these different impact vectors. There will be a plurality of scores there for the plurality of values that humans have. And I think that there's going to be, this is my prediction and also a call to action for the audience, there's going to be a bunch of things that can be built in between EAS and Gitcoin grants, Gitcoin Passport, EAS and RPGF, EAS and every other public goods funding thing out there. So call to action for the builders, get to know these primitives and find ways to stitch them together. There's an opportunity, I think, for builders to build I would make the analogy mortar between the bricks. So if we've got all these different money Legos out there, how do we connect them in ways that create the meme of impact equals profit and in more impact funding for public goods? So that's what I will end on as a call to action for the builders. Let's find a way to stitch these things together. Carl, you have any last questions or anything you want to end on?
I think that was a great way of ending it. Thank you so much.
Cool. Steve, thanks so much for joining. Looking forward to seeing EAS grow in 2024.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Carl.
All right. We just heard from Steve Dakh. I am excited about Ethereum Attestation service because I think it is a primitive we can use to track impact and to approach the meme of impact equals profit. Thanks again for listening to the GreenPilled.network podcast. Again, we are building a coordination, a network society of thousands of hackers, dreamers, and doers focused on using crypto to bring positive sum digital systems to the world, like Steve, like Ethereum Attestation service, like the people who are building on these primitives. Again, all episodes during this season are available on chain. The Greenpill community can collect these episodes. Go to pods.media/greenpill to find the episodes and start collecting. As you're closing out the podcast, please remember to make an offering to our algorithmic overlords. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Please gratify us with likes and share this episode with friends. That's the source of all our powers. That's how we build the Greenpill movement. That's how we build this network society that is using crypto for positive sum games. Peace and love. See you next time.